Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be looking at patch 5.2 and doing our usual unofficial patch notes breakdown where I look at more than just what Plarium have told you. So in the first part of this video we will be covering the content that Plarium have released in their patch notes, and in the second part we're going to be looking at the data in the background that hasn't been released and whether or not that really is important. As with all of my patch note videos, I start with a disclaimer to state that the second part that I cover is not officially recognized, officially approved by Plarium, so obviously it is subject to usual things such as maybe there's misinterpretation or anything of that nature. However, it is from the data and it is from the game code, therefore it is in the game in its current state, and probably you could reverse engineer everything I say. So let's take a look at the official patch notes first to see what has changed in patch 5.20. Okay, so let's have a look. So obviously we knew the quality of life changes have been imminent for the past couple of months. I'm actually quite surprised we've had it this patch and not later in spring, to be honest. However, it's good that they've now added, or at least started to add, some Tavern improvements so we don't have to brew 6 things at a time and we don't have to sort through different things. These are just basic things that make every part of champion training tournaments and events a pain in the backside to do. So I'm glad that they've added these things. We've also got new save teams, a new just expanded list, which is very good for PvE. Not so much for PvP, but I suppose if you're battling a lot in Platinum Arena, maybe Gold 5 now, which has just been added in this patch also, then having more teams available to you that you can quickly switch between that are already preset up to do what you want is excellent, especially for PvE where, you know, I'm at the point personally where I'm starting to go, well, I need to cut a team, but I don't really want to cut this team. I'd rather keep my Bommel team set up in there. This is a great and welcome change. We know more is coming with the AI tool later on in the year where we can actually configure per stage or per floor within the encounter. We've got some Hydra related clan quests. I have extracted this from the data, so I'll be able to show you this in part 2 of this video. And we've got some UX updates, which if anyone has played Hydra knows that the last thing we needed was UX updates. We've got Classic Arena's now got Gold 5. So I kind of fought my way up to Gold 5 yesterday, and it is basically quite tough for a lot of players. My 356 Arbiter wasn't really fast enough most of the time. For people who are looking to try and start maybe competing in Platinum, it's a good training ground. For people who are trying to get their Arbiter missions, this should hopefully help, at least for a week, give you some better chances of getting to Gold 4. Although I don't know how long people will want to stay in Gold 5 when we look at what you get for being in that. Now, obviously each tier every week you get a reward. I have the specific changes to the rewards coming up in part 2 of this video, so stick around to see what those numbers look like. Platinum tier has gone from 300 to 500. We need at least 1,000, I would say, but it's good that they're heading that way. Super raids for Doom Tower for bosses. This is excellent, really good. I mean, using 15 silver keys every single day is time consuming. If I can do that in half the time, excellent. Is it perfect? No, but it's the step in the right direction in my opinion. So we've got 2 champion rebalances here, and I wouldn't say they're rebalances, they're more stat adjustments. The other Tomb Angel is getting 10 more speed on her base. That's amazing. She was incredibly slow, almost designed as if it was made for 2020 when champions were that slow considering how strong she used to be in terms of damage. We also have Hex Reaper has now stopped removing Hex debuffs. This is another welcome change because it means that you can continuously keep using her nuke. I mean, you could potentially put her into a reflex set, disable her other abilities, and just keep nuking with that ability. That makes sense. And they've reduced the cooldown. 5 turns is still quite a lot, but it's better than what it was. Now, I am super excited for Bistophus. If anyone has sort of speaks to me in Discord or knows, I had a Bistophus which I rage booked whilst doing Night Revenants Faction Wars, and it was an absolute nightmare, and I still didn't do it even after I booked him. But ever since I've booked him, I've always wanted to try and find a use for him. His skill kit is very good in the sense that he's got an AoE decreased defense, AoE block active skills, he can true fear, or I think it's a normal fear, on his A1, and he also has the highest base attack in the game. Unfortunately, the 75% was a real problem because it just meant that reliability, considering we're already dealing with lots of RNG in the game, the 3%, reaction, stone skin, swift parry, all of these things that make him problematic, is just another thing on top, and it's just not ideal. So I'm going to be doing a video hopefully in the next couple of weeks where I actually look at Bistophus fully and see if we can actually make him useful in certain areas of the game, because I'm determined after booking him that I will find a use for the Blue Man group. But yeah, what have they changed? More speed, great. Any champion with less than 90 speed is a nightmare. 94 is on the really low end. 100 for a legend champion is reasonable. We've got his 8-3 now will be 100% chance when booked instead of 75% chance. This is a mad change. It's much better. It makes him actually useful, at least to enable his kit. Considering if anyone doesn't know, his A2 will 100% crit if a block active skills is out. So now he can guarantee that he will always 100% crit on that A2. So then we've got a bunch of other changes here, which I'm not going to go through in bit by bit because most of these are bug fixes. The one thing I want to point out here though is fixed a bug that caused info about Chaagur's stupor skill upgrades to be displayed in the constant agony skill description. That's his passive. They've actually changed more than this, and it is quite a big change in my opinion. We'll cover this in section 2, but there is more to Chaagur than just a text change. So we will take a look at that. And then we've got some game experience enhancements here that are, I suppose, just quality of life fixes. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. They are what they are. Expanded personal tiers in clan versus clan. I have the changes in the part 2 as well, so we're going to take a look at that next. So I think the patch so far has been pretty good. We've got lots of quality of life changes. Obviously there are champions released with this patch that wasn't in the patch notes, it was in the highlights. I've got the breakdown multipliers at the end of this section. We're going to take a look at that. But let's take a look at everything now that wasn't in the patch notes. This is stuff that has been added to the game code, and I've extracted it from the data mine, and they haven't told you about it. So it's information that might be relevant to you, or you might go, I don't really care. As always, as I said at the start of this video, this is subject to the fact that it's not officially approved by Plarium, so it's based on the game data. Nothing I say here is what Plarium says. So let's talk about the Hydra quests. There are 3 quests added for Expert and 3 quests added for Elite. These are the quests that you will need to complete if you take it for Expert. So you've got use 18 level 60 champions in any battles. That's pretty easy if you do your 3 keys. Place 100 debuffs in a single Hydra battle on normal or higher. Again, I think that's fairly straightforward. And this one makes me chuckle because I have no idea who wrote this quest, but maybe someone can tell me who uses this. Places any combination of Hex, Bomb, or 50% decrease accuracy debuffs in a Hydra battle 20 times. Now, I don't know anyone else here, but are you using the Bomb in Hydra? We can barely get enough damage out to start with. Who else has the luxury of bringing a Bomb champion that doesn't do anything? Hex somewhat makes sense, but again, I think most people aren't using Hex at all. So really, it's decreased accuracy. So, strange one. But those are the 3 ones for Expert. And then we've got 3 elite quests added. So the first one, decapitate 10 Hydra heads on hard difficulty or higher. Quite hard, I would say, to do in one battle. 10 heads decapitated. Maybe if you're doing the Trender strategy, you could do it. But I think most people probably get maybe like 1 round of 4, maybe 5. Maybe it can be done across 3 keys. I don't know, but we'll have to see. But that seems quite hard to do in 1 key. Survive 150 turns against a Hydra on hard or higher. That's relatively okay, as long as you have the meta champions. And then free champions from being digested by Hydra 7 times. Again, as long as that's over 3 keys, that's okay. If it's on 1 key, it seems really difficult to do. Nothing really big about these quests. I mean, they're more quests. Most people, I think, have forgotten about the clan quest system because it's clan gold, and most of the time you don't get your energy, and most people are only getting revenge. They haven't added a new champion since Yannicka, so I think it's become a bit of a forgotten system. However, I suppose it's nice. It's not really the Hydra changes or the Hydra improvements we wanted, but it's something extra. Moving on, there is a new thing within the localization data within the game code, which talks about a personal pack builder. So the language we're seeing here from the game is create your own personal deal and get exactly what you need. So it looks like, or insinuates, that we're going to be getting a sort of a paid pack, I would imagine, where you can basically put the items you want for a set fee and create a combo deal for what you actually want out of it. I think this is a great idea. I know a lot of people will say, oh my god, this is whale cracking content. Half the time you're not getting really what you want. Either you want shards, or you want energy, or you want gems. You don't really want the combination. Sometimes you just want books. So if you can build a pack that works best for you, I don't know whether it's going to be time limited or whether it's going to be permanently on. I see no negative in this as long as the values in which they place in that pack are not a rip-off. So I don't know whether this is officially going to come, but it has been added as localization data, so maybe we'll get it soon. The other thing I think which is important to note is there is a new string in the localization data which directly references the battle cheat engine. So what will happen now, I guess, is if your account is triggered by the battle cheat engine, you will get a message show up in the game that says the battle was too fast. This battle won't count towards your score. The resource used to start this battle will be returned to your account after you log in. It's a bit weird that they get their resource back, because if you're caught cheating, it should be an instant ban, surely. So I don't know whether this is just a safety precaution that if they maybe accidentally trigger because a team was going too fast, but This shows that they are continuing to develop solutions for the battle cheat engine and continuing to be on top of the issue of people using the cheat engine to speed up their game and gain an advantage over other people. So I think it's a good direction. So, onto some bug fixes. Critical damage debuff has been changed. In the old code, patch 5.1 and before, if you applied a critical damage debuff to someone, it would be multiplier, the value in which it calculates how much to reduce, was based on your base crit damage. Now what this basically means is if I was applying a critical damage debuff to an enemy, it wasn't reducing the enemy's crit damage, it was reducing your champion's crit damage. Now this is quite a big change potentially, because they did change critical damage recently to being a multiplicative effect rather than additive. So what that basically means is if an enemy trender has 300% crit damage, instead of it reducing just 30% to take it to 270, it's going to reduce it by 30%, I think it is, or is it 25% now? 25% I think they changed it to. So you're essentially taking from that 300% a lot more than just 25%. However, if you were applying it before patch 5.2, it was basing it off your champion's debuffer. Now if he isn't built for damage, it means it's probably not doing an awful lot. So now they've changed it to the target, this should be much better. Whether or not it becomes a very powerful debuff, I don't know, but you should notice that if you debuff an enemy nuker with this debuff, it should be much less damage. Personal rewards for clan versus clan. So the way it would kind of worked in the previous system was if you kind of got yourself into the right number range, you would almost guarantee to be in the tiers that you would wanted to, but there was always a pot, very similar to the way that clans work. So if you think of 100% of players, 95% of them would sit in tier 1 personal rewards. So they've changed it in this patch now so that it's basically making tier 1 to 5, or tiers 2 to 5 I should say, larger, tier 1 smaller, and tier 6 the same. So it should basically mean that if you were previously in, say, maybe tier 3, you might have moved up to tier 4 potentially. So that's the changes on the screen for you there. Nothing really major to call out. Some people will do it, some people won't. It's very dependent if you win the clan versus clan, which is also very tricky. But it's good to see that they are trying to open up more tiers and more rewards for more players. Gold 5 arena rewards. So the big change I would say out of all this is the Magisteel. If you're struggling for Magisteel, I personally don't struggle for it. I generally sit on 10,000 all the time, but then I'm constantly doing arena. I know there are some players who have completed their Great Hall that do arena just for maybe the dailies, or if they can be bothered because they don't have any use for gold medals. So the changes to Magisteel here means that on average now you'll get 66% more. What's disappointing here is the goals of Gold 5. Gold 5 is meant to be competitive, and as a result you should get rewards. But the benefits of being in Gold 5 are very, very small compared to Gold 4. You get 2% to your primary stats, which is effectively, like, was it level 2 in Great Hall in terms of bronze medals? It's not substantial. And then in terms of the end of the cycle, the reset rewards, you're not really getting much more. Again, they haven't guaranteed rank 6, they haven't guaranteed legendary, they haven't increased the number of artifacts you get. You're going to get 8, whether you're in Gold 4 or Gold 5. The chance of you getting a rank 6 epic has gone up by 2.5%, and the chance of rank 5 as a result has gone down. The chance of you getting a rank 6 legendary has gone up by 0.77%. You're not going to notice these changes, to be honest, considering you only get 8 a week. It's very disappointing. In my opinion, they should have removed rank 5 from Gold 5 completely and just given you rank 6 epic and legendaries and split the odds, just to give you good usable artifacts, because most people will just sell their artifacts because they're not good. For most endgame accounts in Gold 5, rank 5 epic divine life is virtually not useful. The only good things coming out of it is divine speed probably, or divine offense, and they need to be really good pieces. They need to roll speed substat. You just don't get enough of them. The odds of you getting a rank 6 legendary divine speed with speed set sub rolls is so low, it might take you a year to get one good piece. So that's disappointing. I would say to anyone, if they want to compete in arena, Gold 5 is good. It's hard. It's not as difficult as Platinum, but it's close to that level. So if you want to practice and train and try out different builds, it's great fun. But ultimately, you're not pressured to do it. You're not going to gain anything from it. You could just sit in Gold 4 and farm your medals with free wins now. So disappointing. Hopefully this is just only a starter for the year of PvP, but so far that's not a good change. Right, let's talk about the champion changes here. Chaagur in the patch notes, they mentioned that they had fixed the passive. Effectively, his passive used to say you could book it for more damage, which was never the case. What they actually did, though, on top of this, is they've changed the way that the passive deals damage. So any champion that does a damaging ability, they has a specific effect kind, for a better word, and that is considered 6,000, just as a number. What they've done with Chaagur is they've configured it now. Instead of it being an attack, it's now coded as if it's a counter-attack. Now, anyone who knows who's used a counterattack champion, you have a penalty for counterattacking. It's 25% less damage. Now, some things, like Avenging, can be overridden. So if you use the Avenging artifact set and your champion counterattacks, they don't suffer the same penalty. They've forgotten to make this change. So by changing it to a counterattack, I think they were trying to fix the issues, and they thought it was probably more appropriate. The issue is they've also penalized the damage. So Chaagur, now, when he does his counterattack effect, if an enemy takes a poison and he counterattacks with his passive, he will deal 25% less damage. If you were using him as a solo dragon champion or in other content, you will find that his runs are slower now, because effectively you've just taken 25% damage out of him. This is, again, one of those changes, like I said in the last patch notes. This should be noted on the patch notes. Anyone who is using Chaagur isn't going to be aware that they've made this change, because it's only by understanding the game code that we can discover and determine this. But you will notice, and I've verified this, by the way, with math, with someone who has got a Chaagur, that he was doing 25% less damage. The good thing, though, is he still will heal, so he won't die. You won't notice any difference, but you will notice that your runs are slower. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know, maybe they'll fix this. I doubt it. Let's talk about the new champions then. So I'm going to go through the rares, then I'm going to go through the epics and the legendaries, and then I'll do the fusion champions at the end. And there is a little hint about Karato Fox Hunter here, which might actually, again, stuff that hasn't been described in the skill that is happening, that is important for you to understand when you're building Karato. So keep watching and I will explain that at the end. So let's take a look at Cagebound. He's a defense-based champion, and he's pretty much designed to be a support champion for your team. He's got ally protection, so his damage is never going to be crazy, but he's got a good base defense of 1332. That's really high for a rare champion, to be honest, so you'll be able to keep him alive. Damage is average, speed is good. He's one of those rares that if you progress and you need an ally protection, he's going to be helpful, but most people would probably not going to use the champion, because there is now quite a few ally protection champions in the game that you can use. We had the Shadowkin added in the last patch. You've got Kyoku, you've got Vasulf, you've got Taragi as well, so there's lots of non-legendary options alongside this. But if you need a rare and you're really struggling and you just need that little bit extra, he's a good option. Medicus. So some people have said this looks a bit like it should be a different faction of an elves, and I know in the game code there was meant to be another elf faction, whether or not we ever see that, so maybe it could have been. But this guy, this girl I should say, is an attack-based champion and doesn't really do any damage, but I do believe she has increased speed and increased buffs on her A3, so she's, again, another support champion. There are small version buffs. You might find some uses for her. Her base speed is incredibly fast for a rare, 106, that is really high, but I'm not really sure what you're meant to do with her, really. I mean, because most people are going to look for Apothecary in the early game, or maybe you pick up someone like Haikatoon, which immediately gives you a better speed buff, so I don't know. But the damage is okay, it's just not anything special. Next up we have Spymaster, which looks pretty cool with the helmet. HP based champion, which we know is always the worst kind of damage champion in the game, so nothing really to shout out about here. You know, it's good base HP, decent speed, but both abilities are going to do 0 damage, so really you're looking at this champion from what else it can do. Chaagur, the Barbarian rare. He is an attack-based champion. He does have, I believe, an AoE on his A3, which is an average ability. Really slow. That's the problem with this champion. 93, he's going to be very difficult to get going. But he does have a lot of damage in his kit for a rare. It's average, though, comparative to the rest of the game. So you're not really going to pick him up if you're in the mid to late game. But he's an AoE barb. He could do some work for you. We've skipped over the rares pretty quickly because I think for most people, you know, when I do these assessments, it's about damage and whether or not they can nuke and whether or not they're going to be useful. Most rares for most players are probably not going to be very useful, but other content creators might cover them in more detail when they go through the champions. Next up, we have what I like to call the female Tyrell, because she literally looks like Tyrell in terms of the armor. Andresia, defense-based, which is pretty good. Her numbers here are actually very strong. She's very fast, 1288. She has got decreased crit damage on the A1, which is rare. I don't think there's many A1 decreased crit damage. Whether or not you actually need that debuff is different, but it is there. She has got an ability to reduce enemy buffs, which I think is quite powerful. I actually quite like this epic. I haven't quite figured out where I'm going to use her if I get her, but she is a strong damage dealer. The 3.7 is the AoE on the A3, and it's a strong AoE. So from a defense-based nucleus, it's pretty good. There's not that many godlike defense-based nucleus in the game, so being strong means she's actually quite high up on the list of other defense-based nucleus. So a great epic in terms of damage numbers, and the utility she brings is also very good. And again, good base defense at 2800. Incidentally, Cage Breakers is greater than hers, and so that's kind of a strange one that a rare is greater than an epic, but there's your coding and math things from Plarium. 102 speed, very good. This face creeps the heck out of me. I don't know if anyone else thinks so. Like, it's weird. I can't look at the face. It's creepy. But Thoresk. Now, Thoresk is unique because she's the first and only champion in the game to bring decrease resistance. The problem is it's not 100%. It is an epic, as you would expect, so it's not guaranteed to run. Her damage is a bit difficult to know, but generally I think it's going to be around about Kale level nuke. Her passive will obviously increase the crit damage, but it's a bit tricky to know whether you're going to actually activate it. You can't really guarantee. I think the idea is you're meant to use the decreased resistance debuff to apply the passive, but obviously then you have to build damage and accuracy, which we know is always a bit tricky from a stat distribution. She has got really good base attack at 1409. The base speed is acceptable at 97, and we've got lots of multi-hits. So if you want to use her in Fire Knight, you can do. I wouldn't necessarily say the debuff for decreased resistance is valuable. However, if you want to do 10% more damage to the boss from this champion, I think that actually is just thinking that's a good thing. If that was an overall team buff, I think that would be really good. And when we look at Borangar, you'll notice that his is a bit stronger, his passive. Double hit A1, triple hit A2, 3.9 on his AoE is very good, strong across the board. It's a solid epic, but I don't know whether decreased resistance on one champion that isn't guaranteed is good enough to actually make an appearance in places where decreased resistance is important. We're thinking, maybe, are you going to be able to keep her alive in Hydra, where resistance is a bit of an issue? Arena, it seems very unlikely because you want to guarantee that you're going to be able to get that decreased resistance. I don't know. I would need to pull this champion to play test it a bit more. I think it's potential there, but it is a unique champion, the first decreased resistance debuff. Sir Artimage, which I keep calling Armitage, is an attack base. Now this is, for me, is the S tier nuker in the epic pool. This guy can smack some decent damage. We've got 1310 base attack, which is good but not amazing. Another 97 base speed, which is acceptable. The A1 is godlike because it double hits. It's also a decreased defense and a decreased speed debuff, so it's very good debuffs on a boss to use in places like Clan Boss, in places like Fire Knight, in places like other places where you want to be hitting a single target. It's not AoE, so that's a bit of a problem, but for just bosses, it's a great set of debuffs on a very high damage ability. And then we've got an AoE on the A2, which self-cleanses before it attacks. So you can't really decrease attack this guy. He's always going to hit the highest. You can't debuff him, which is actually very nice to do. And because it's a self-cleanse, you don't need anything else like extra accuracy or things like that. It just works. So it's a really good kit. And then on the A3, we've got a 30% ignore defense. Now, this becomes like godlike on a clan boss scenario, but in normal scenarios against a sort of a typical 2500 defense, it becomes a strong damage ability. I like this champion. I think it's a very good kit. It's well designed. It does a lot of damage. It's not going to necessarily be your top tier arena nuker, but if you're looking for an alternative nuker, someone alternative to Kale, it's going to be up there in that kind of levels of damage. I highly recommend him, especially if you want like a hybrid kind of, I need a nuker but also a decreased defense champion. Works really well. The first of the legendaries. Now, there's not many damage legendaries. It's only Karato that really does damage here. These guys are support champions effectively. So Archbishop Pintroy will do his damage based on attack. He's got a decent base speed of a 101. It's good. It's nothing outstanding. It's not 115, but it's good. And he's got quite a low base attack. Whenever you see a base attack below 20 like 1200, it's going to be a low damage champion, no matter the multiplier. The only extreme scenarios is someone like Maneater, who his multiplier is like 8.2, so it's so high it doesn't matter so much. But his A1 is a 4.7. It's still strong amongst other A1s. His A2 is an average. I think that's the AoE. But his kit is very good. He does the block buffs and the block, I think the heal reduction mechanics. So his debuffs that he brings are very valuable. So even though he doesn't do damage, he's still a pretty good champion to pull. He also self-cleanses himself, so he's going to be very difficult to kill every time he takes a turn. So that's Archbishop Pintroy. Boragar the Elder, which I keep on calling Boranga. Now again, HP-based champion. This guy is not designed to do damage at all. He has one ability that does attack. It's HP-based. He's got a good base attack, although it's not the top tier. Trender still has more base HP than he does for some crazy reason. 97 speed is a bit slow, but again, this champion is unique. It is the only champion that does increase resistance in the game so far. Is he going to break the arena meta? Probably not. Could he go into some really annoying stall arena defense teams? Probably. That's the difference. He's not going to necessarily be like, oh my god, I've just pulled Yumiko, or I've just pulled Warlord, or I've got Siphi Rotus, but he will surprise people with how powerful that buff is. Keep in mind he does the 10% less damage if he puts the increased resistance on everyone, because everyone's resistance is going to be higher, and it's just going to be causing a lot of problems. The only thing is, effectively, if you bring increased accuracy, his increased resistance is negated by the increased accuracy, and then you're back to, can I stop the 800 accuracy Ceres from taking my debuffs? Probably not. So this isn't going to instantly make resistance now meta. But it's an interesting champion. We'll have to see whether or not he actually makes any waves in the arena meta. Now, for the most broken champion in the game by quite a mile. Yumiko is now the best champion in Raid Shadow Legends if you pull her. Full stop. She's not as extremely good for certain scenarios. So Warlord, for example, in the arena might be better because his cooldown on his lockout is 1 turn less and it fully locks out. But generally speaking, she's going to replace some champions in speedruns in top teams. In Kaimar teams in PvE, she probably replaces Kaimar in every area. She has a double hitter on her A1, makes her better in Fire Knight. Whether she replaces Renegade, I don't know, but probably. Just because the Hex debuff is really strong. The A1 steals turn meter and it's a double hit, and she'll do that quite a lot. And she can just do a cycle all the time. Her A3 is what probably most people were going to go, oh my god, it's broken. It's a 3-turn reduction and a 3-turn lockout. That is kind of insane. For Iragoth, it's massive. It means that you can basically lock out Iragoth's skills and still keep your skills rotating as long as she's in enough resistance. She's also got that Veil built-in block debuffs, which means that when she starts a battle, she gets Veil, you can't debuff her. And that happens without Karato. The Hex actually in the A2 is really broken in the sense that against bosses, half the time the debuffs are going to go straight back to the boss. If you're in Bommel, half the bombs are going to go back to Bommel. If you're in Sorath, half of the debuffs are going to go back on Sorath. Even if the boss is immune to that debuff, it still gets transferred back, and it does it before the debuff is placed. So Bommel's bombs, for people like Riho, don't get sent back because the bomb has to place first on Riho, then Riho sends it back. With Yumiko, a bit like Deflection, the bomb is never placed to begin with. It's sent back if it passes to 50% before it actually gets placed on you. So it means that Bommel's bombs can be thrown back at him. And when we play tested this, it was obnoxiously strong. On normal wave content, 75% chance when booked that any debuff that any champion receives is placed back on the Hex target. It's very strong. It gives your team almost block debuffs, and it also effectively gives them a boosted deflection set on everyone, which is a very powerful set. It's just very difficult to get a lot of it because most people would prefer swift parry. This champion is absolutely broken. But what about damage? She has got quite a low base attack. Very low actually, 870. She's not designed to do damage, and to be honest, if she did a lot of damage at the same time, I'd be very worried about the balancing team. The speed is high, but it's not ultra high. 105 is very good. She's got a strong A1 still though. It's a double attack. It steals 15% turn meter or heals her. So the fact that it does some damage is good because it means that you can get some value out of the healing. The A2 is a 6 times attack, so the multiplier is quite high. If you can do what you can do with like Brogni and Maneaters and push the attack up for her, this could really smack some numbers. Depends where you want to use her. And you can use her in a lot of places. If you pull Yumiko, she instantly becomes your #1 champion in your account. She'll go in all your PvE teams. She'll probably go in your PvP team unless you have specific Platinum Desires or you've got Warlord and Kaimon specific builds. But she will go in for most players in every single thing you build. She's so strong. And she doesn't need Karato. She gains benefits from Karato, but the only thing she gains is being able to steal turn meter when a hexed target is boosted, and when a target is veiled, she can steal the veil. That's when Karato is required. Otherwise, everything in her kit works. So let's talk about the fusion champions. I was quite surprised we've only got one epic in the fusion. That's surprising to me. But they did pick one of the good ones. So Fylja is a dwarf epic and attack based. Now she's got some pretty unique mechanics. What she will do is if she's under 2 or less buffs, which is pretty easy to achieve at the start of a battle, as long as you're not bringing a shield set and immunity, and something else, it's pretty difficult to actually not get this passive, she will give herself increased attack and increased crit damage buff. Now the increased attack is more important This means you can technically run her in things like immunity and still get the increased attack buff and still do damage. The fact that her A2 fully depletes turn meter means that she might be viable for a Dark Fae team. Now we know when we do Dark Fae, the idea is when you get to the boss stage, you have to first kill all of the Orc clones and then you can start killing the boss, and you want to try and keep the boss's turn meter down so she never takes a turn. Well, if Fylja goes first, she's going to give herself the increased attack, which is probably going to be enough for you to be able to one-shot your team, even though her nuke is not that high. So that's kind of where I think her best place is going to be for people. If they haven't got a Herndig or a Deacon in their team, then she could potentially come in to do that job, because you're getting the turn meter alongside the nuke that you need for your team. So what are her numbers? 1310 at base attack is pretty good. It's not outstanding, you know, 1400 is where we'd want to see for a nuker, but it's good enough. And a base speed of 104 is very good if you want her to be like that go first champion. You're going to need a lot of speed to do that. Double hit A1 for 1.7, it's a strong A1 ability. The A2, which is the deplete turn meter, is a 6.5 attack, so it's pretty good multiplier, but it actually only works out as average when we do the calculations. This is because of multiple different things, such as I think she's got a lower base crit damage and a couple of other things. And the A3 then at a 3.5 attack is the AoE ability, and it is also average. Now, another thing to note about the A3, which we didn't know until we actually play tested, she will gain turn meter and heal for every person she critically hits. So if you think in a Dark Fae encounter, there's 6 targets that she can critically hit, which is the boss plus all of your allies. So that means you're going to get 6 times 15% of the damage you deal as heals, and then 6 times 15% as turn meter back. So she's effectively going to gain an extra turn, which is really good for this idea. So she'll go A3, nuke the wave, then the boss comes back, A2, deplete the turn meter, and off you go then with your allures. So I think she could be an excellent champion for that. Don't know whether she's better than Herndig. I will be hopefully pulling a duplicate and testing her, and I might do a video on it just to show that team off. Now, Karato Fox Hunter is the last champion we're going to look at here. He is the fusion, and he is an absolute monster for damage. Although, I will caveat this, he's not going to be in Plat Arena meta, which for most people, it doesn't. This video isn't really designed for just the Plat Arena meta. That's not a big thing, but just as a thing, and I'll explain my logic in a minute. His base attack at 1564 is high. It's very good. It is the sort of top 20-30% of the attack based. You know, I think the highest is 1694, so it's very high. Base speed at 99 is a little bit slow, but it's not too bad. We've got a triple hit A1, which applies weaken, 1.5 attack times 3. That's a godlike ability for an A1. His A2 is godlike at 6.5 attack. And again, as an example of why we're looking at Fylja, how the difference is there. His base attack is almost 250 more, which means that the attack scale for him converts that A2 into a much stronger attack than Fylja. And then his A3, which is his AoE nuke, is 4.65 times attack. That is another godlike, and it also has amazing animation. There are things about this champion that make this quite difficult to fully estimate damage. Now, we know on the passive in the game, it states that masteries and ally passive abilities don't work on this champion. It's not quite true. I'm going to cover that in a second. We also know that the enemy masteries and enemy ally reduction passives also will get ignored, so your duchesses won't work. So I've just assumed at the moment, like when we do these gradings, the thing we don't do is we don't factor in masteries because they're considered to be a universal benefit. If I'm comparing Champion A with Champion B, Champion A has 19% masteries, Champion B has 19% masteries. The same ranking is going to exist. They're still going to be either godlike or weak or strong. It doesn't really matter because they're going to extend and increase on the same path. Well, this guy's different. His nuke damage essentially on an AoE is around about the same as an Ethos level nuke, which is, you know, it's one of the top 10, top 20 nukers in the game. The problem is Ethos is going to get an extra 19% that he isn't going to get. So you end up in this scenario that if he's up against a Duchess, he does more than Ethos. If he's up against sort of non-damaging reduction passives, Ethos will do more damage than him. And then in other scenarios, it's a bit different again. Will he make Plat Arena meta? As I said, no. The reason why is he only has one AoE. He can't solve reaction. He doesn't solve swift parry. He doesn't solve stone skin. There is a world that if you had Yumiko, you could potentially maybe chain cycle his A2 because he'll get an extra turn every time he kills someone. But that stops as soon as someone procs swift parry, and swift parry is almost all over the Platinum Arena meta. Generally in Platinum Arena meta, an ideal nuker is someone who's got either a block revive or an extra turn or some ways of ignoring unkillable or and 2 AoEs, basically something that makes him more than just one hit wonder, which is why people like King Garog, even though they hit as hard as Ethos, are not played in top level. It's why Trender is so popular with Ethos, is because they both have 2 AoEs, they both hit really hard, although Trender hits a lot harder, and they also kind of are the benefits with Ethos being affinity friendly, and Trender's very tanky. This guy, you will see people use him in their nuke teams, and he will hit really hard, but he isn't going to be a replacement for Trender or any top tier nuker. You know, if you're looking for a better nuker to replace your Trender, you're not going to use him for that. Now, what I want to cover is some of the things that are wrong about his description and how his passive actually works. So what you need to understand first is the passive in itself doesn't apply the debuffs to the damage. The things about the damage masteries, that's not in the passive, it's in every single skill. The way it works effectively is any damage multiplication increase or any damage multiplication decrease effect. Those two specific things will not work for him. So what does that mean? If I'm fighting a normal champion and I'm above Ascendancy level 3 where his passive is activated, and incidentally that I haven't got block passive skills debuff on me. So if Romanto has attacked me with his block passive skills, he actually gains benefit from masteries then. It disables all of those things. If none of those conditions are active, then he will essentially not use his masteries that increase damage multiplication. Opportunist, Heart of Glory, things that say increases damage by X percentage, they don't work. Duchess passives will not work for his damage because they reduce damage by X percentage. Isuga is different because she doesn't reduce the damage, she transfers the damage. So ally protection, for example, he's not going to ignore ally protection because he's still doing 100% damage, it's just being divided between 2 champions. The same thing with Isuga, but it does mean that his nuke is reduced because effectively Isuga takes the damage before it becomes a crit, and then she increases it by her own crit damage rather than Karato's crit damage. That's been explained in another video. But what this means is there is one thing that the passive doesn't explain, and it is very important. His masteries will work against bosses. If you are attacking a boss, it doesn't matter about anything else. He is basically just another nuker. Clan boss, for example, his A1 weaken is very good for clan boss. Well, you just build him exactly the same way you would a clan boss champion because his masteries will still work. It's only if you are facing a scenario that covers these specific things. So, to summarize, just so that it's very clear, if you're attacking a boss, your damage masteries and multiplication effects, ally multiplication effects, bad L, all of this stuff will work against bosses. If you are attacking in arena, they don't work. If you are level 2 or less ascendancy, nothing matters at all. Your passive isn't enabled, so your masteries will continue to work. If Romanto places block passive skills, your masteries will work. And finally, there's a little funny thing here. If they ever release a boss champion that allows you to do block active skills, he'll be able to do that without being booked at 100% chance because they lazily coded it. I hope that was a bit of interest to you for the Karato. I think that's a bit of an important thing to note because that has a massive impact as how you build it. If you want to use Karato for your weakened champion in clan boss, I'm thinking if you're running the Fushan Demitha comp and you currently have a subpar champion in there that doesn't do weaken, go in there and do the weaken and do lots of damage for you. And you can build him with masteries and he'll get Heart of Glory, he'll get all the extra benefits from being the enemy being max HP and all those things in masteries. That's well worth doing. So it's important you understand that. So that brings us to the end of the video. I hope that was interesting. As always, if you have any ideas, comments, feedback, please leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and I will catch you in the next video, hopefully where I'll be talking about Bistofus.